Domestic violence has been in the news nationally as the NFL grapples with the issue. At the state level, advocates are questioning the amount of money going to local shelters. To talk about it, we have the heads of two local domestic violence shelters. Lisa Wine, she's executive director of Haven House in Hammond, and Mary Beth Schultz, she is the executive director of the Caring Place in Valparaiso. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
So Laura Berry, executive director of the Indiana Coalition Against Domestic Violence, she said that shelters have seen a 77% increase in calls and requests for assistance since the NFL's Ray Rice scandal. Lisa, you've seen a spike actually over the last year. Have we seen more of an increase over the last month or so?
We've seen increased costs, but for us, we've had this type of surge since the beginning of October in 2013. What I expect is going to take place here is that when I thought maybe our census would modify some, this surge is going to take us all the way through the holidays. I don't expect any type of break at this point because of the publicity that's been coming out. It's definitely fueling calls coming in.
And you're nearly at capacity right now.
Yes.
Why do you think that is? Is it just the publicity, or is something happening here?
Well, I have definitely seen an increase in agitation level in terms of the type of cases coming in. I've seen an increase in strangulation cases. I've seen an increase in invasion of privacy charges where there's been a violation of protective order or no contact order. But I think the other thing is that there's also been an increase of protective orders around the state. And I think what it's doing is encouraging people to follow through now with maybe when they were hesitant before because of concerns about retaliation.
So people are calling after the video surfaced of Ray Rice hitting his fiancée, now wife. When it comes to what people are taking away from that, what are they telling you about what they're hearing? What are you hearing from people?
I'm seeing more of an escalation level in terms of injuries. If nothing else, I think with all the publicity with the NFL, I'm hoping people are going to be less hesitant about coming in or seeking protective orders or no contact orders through the courts. But definitely we're seeing more visible injuries. I've seen an increase in strangulation, an increase with invasion of privacy charges. So the whole momentum of escalation and agitation level has definitely increased.
So you think this is not just a matter of people this is on their minds, this is giving them an incentive to call. You think there's been an actual escalation in domestic violence over the last several months?
Since the beginning of October of 2013. It's just been unbelievable. There was no warning. It just came out of the clear blue, and it has not stopped.
Mary Beth, are you seeing something similar over in Valparaiso?
I think this summer we did see an increase, and especially with children. We've had lots of children in shelter, and that really varies with the population. Sometimes it's single people, sometimes it's families. But with the increase in children, I'm thinking, especially with all this awareness, that people are afraid to stay in an abusive home. They want to protect their kids, so they're more willing to come into shelter because of that.
So has this been emboldening for victims of domestic violence? Or seeing that people are taking this a little more seriously than they had been? Is that what's happening here?
I definitely think people are taking it more seriously. And I think when you have any type of an awareness campaign, whether it's the Purple Purse, whether it's the NFL, people pay attention. And this has been inundated on the news. I mean, you can't turn on almost any type of a television show or sporting events. It's on the NFL now. They released a statement.
And what's your take on Ray Rice and how the NFL has handled this? Do you think Roger Goodell did himself any favors in that long press conference that he had last week?
No.
No?
No.
I agree with Mary Beth. No. I was listening to some of the comments, and I know I'm probably not prefacing this completely accurate, but I was listening to the conversation about getting the right individual involved to help them get, to take charge of the situation, and hearing about the right policies and procedures and the right direction to go with. I know former director of the FBI, Mueller, is a person that's being looked at to assist with this. God bless him. He's a good man. He knows about terrorism, counterterrorism, white-collar crime, but I am just baffled at how does domestic violence come into his role. So I'm not sure what that is all about, but I know that...
You're not certain you've got the right person for the job there.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So, all right, we have two people here who are the right person for the job. Give him some advice. Mary Beth?
Well, I know that he did contact NCADV, which is the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. So that is one step in the right direction. I think he has to look at advocacy groups. He has to look at where the types of in-services and training he's doing with the NFL, with players. I think that there's also, this is one thing that I fear, that when you hear so much about head injuries, you hear about NFL players that, are once good guys and now all of a sudden they're acting out because, they've suffered so much traumatic injuries on the field. So I don't think you can take that away. That doesn't excuse domestic violence, but I do think that they need to do a much better job of reaching out to individual players, not just in the grand media stage where, everybody's feeling very defensive.
They seem to have circled their wagons here and look to protect the image of the NFL, maybe keep one of their players on the field. But in the end, is the NFL any different from some of the other large male-dominated institutions that we know in Indiana, be it the military or heavy industry and the steel mills?
That's a good question because we know that there's an increase of sexual assault on campuses.
That's right.
The military has been fighting this for a very long time, and I don't know how much progress they've really made, but at least they're addressing the issue. And sometimes that's all you can do, address the issue and keep it not just front and center when there's a tragedy or a scandal, but make it part of their curriculum, part of the regular training, and make sure that, people coming into organizations, not just male-dominated, all organizations need to have awareness about what is abuse. It's not just physical, it's all different kinds of abuse.
And I would agree with you, Mary Beth, because so often people respond in crisis. And my concern is that this doesn't become a one-time shot where after the initial crisis is over, it's just kind of blow away. And I definitely agree with you on ongoing education. I think in terms of if there is a crisis, just all the medical attention as far as head injuries and things like that. If you know you have a person with who's having some issues to begin with, don't wait until the next crisis starts.
All right.
There needs to be an earlier evaluation process that takes place. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
I want to pivot to the state level because there was a very important meeting. The Indiana Criminal Justice Institute last Friday, they had a meeting where they were taking up funding for local domestic violence shelters. And there have been stories coming out saying that they've withheld as much as $1 million from these shelters over the last couple of years. Then all of a sudden on Monday after this meeting, the governor's office announced that they would have an extra $740 million that would be made available to these shelters. Was that a satisfactory outcome?
Actually, it was a 740,000.
740,000, excuse me.
But it was satisfactory in the sense that they're finally willing to release the funds that they'd already allocated, that we already had basically submitted our grants with budgets. I think the discouraging thing was when we got to the meeting, and I did go down to Indy for the meeting on Friday, was that they asked for an additional layer that I don't think we really needed to provide. They asked for a spending plan. Well, we provide detailed budgets with all our grants. And when the question was asked, can you please tell us and differentiate between a spending plan and the budget, they really couldn't. And that was kind of, it wasn't just discouraging. It made me think, did they really understand what was happening? And I don't think a lot of them did.
Because when our applications are sent out to us and I write my own proposals, they're very clear about what is an appropriate expenditure.
So you felt you were giving them enough information. But what about the notion that they were saying that some shelters have had to lay off people, that there's been a real belt tightening over the last couple of years, that not all of this money's been spent from the state? Are you seeing that up here?
Yeah, they reverted some of the funds. It was, I think you're referring to the $340,000 that they reverted. And there were even questions among the ICGI, the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute, as to why did that happen. So when they started looking at what was going on, we're always playing catch up. I mean, we're fighting now for 2013 funds, and they're still not releasing 2014 funds.
And overall, how well does Indiana do when it comes to funding these shelters? Are you seeing layoffs up here?
I've known of other programs further downstate that have had that type of emergency situation. I know for myself, I have a position that's full-time that I make, quite frankly, part-time because of budget issues. All of us tighten our belts. I'm just wondering, how much can you tighten your belt and have consistency and continuity in terms of delivery of services? You can only stretch yourself so thin.
All right, only stretch yourself so thin. So right now you're then focusing in on the next budget, state budget here, and whether or not there might be an increase in funding for domestic violence shelters. Well, unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to leave it. This has been Mary Beth Schultz. She's the executive director of the Caring Place in Valparaiso, and also Lisa Wine, who is the executive director of Haven House in Hammond. Thanks to both of you
Thanks for the
for being on.
opportunity. We
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.